Hey everyone, welcome back to Beat the Sheet, an Xbox Game Pass challenge. The only podcast aiming to complete every single one of the 499 titles that have been made available on Xbox Game Pass since the start of 2020. As always, I'm your host Andy Wood, and I'm joined by my co-host Josh.
One more title, and I'm out of here. We're so close.
Almost there, man. 499. Anyway, so on this week's show, it's the return of gaming's greatest protagonist, Cloud, in Rain on Your Parade. Levelhead stretches the definition of tutorial to its absolute breaking point. And Nintendo proves that you can put on an indie showcase that doesn't last for 4 hours, which is pretty impressive.
Who'd have thunk it? I felt it needed more Twitch and endless interviews myself. that's what that Nintendo showcase was missing. Just a long, elaborate interview about some shite game that nobody wants to play. God bless you.
Yeah, sounds about right. Anyway, how has your week been, Josh? What have you been up to?
Oh, my week's been okay, you know. My Vita collection's nearly done. I like that. I'm moving on to the PS3 now. I'm just building up a big backlog of games I'm never going to play, which is lovely. I'm very, very pleased with that. But yeah, other than that, just playing some Game Pass, you know. Just the pain never ends. The pain never ends, let me tell you. Every time you think it's done, that sneaky Spencer, he sneaks in another couple of games and I'm back on the horse. God damn it.
Yep, that's how it works around here. But yeah, I mean, my week's pretty much the same. You know, I've mainly got my PS3 collection down now. I had a good pillage of really cheap PS3 games because that console, like the best games, just still cost nothing right now. So if anyone does feel like making a collection, you can get kind of most of the hits for like £2, £3, stuff like that. It's pretty crazy. So I'd recommend trying to get some of those while you still can, and you know, while they're still cheap. But yeah, did that. That was fun. Didn't play any of them because obviously Game Pass, so that didn't happen. That was nice. And I got an Oculus Quest 2 VR headset this week as well, which looks fun. Looks really fun. I'm hoping to do a bit of games development with it once I figure out how it works. But of course, I've not touched that either because I've been playing stuff like Levelhead and being a Cloud. So that's been nice purchase that's just sat on the sidelines all week.
That's just the life, though, isn't it? I tell you what, though, we've both been buying PS3 games. Does the fact that the top right little logo changed halfway through that console's lifespan drive you mad? On the spine of the games, there's a little red box, sometimes for right at the start of it. Then they realized that Spider-Man font was terrible, and they scrapped it all, and they went for like a more traditional PS3 in a black box. It's hard to describe, but it's on the spine, and it means they don't line up very nicely. They all look ridiculous, and that drives me mad. I kind of wish they'd redo all the covers so I could print them off and have them line up correctly. But I guess this is a very niche argument I'm asking for here.
Yeah, I mean, you're definitely some kind of obsessive freak. There's no getting around that. But still, you know, I do get it. I mean, all mine are just sat facing the wrong way right now, so I clearly don't care as much. I've just got them all facing like forward, so all you can see is just clear game case with nothing on them. So that's not particularly good. They'll get sorted eventually. It's I need to find some good room for them. But yeah, I mean, one thing I'm annoyed about while we're on the subject of game boxes, you know, welcome to this week's show, guys. Hope you're enjoying this chat. But I'm really annoyed that the Xbox Series X boxes are just the same as the Xbox ones. Like nothing has changed. They don't stand out at all. They just go next to them in a really boring way. And that makes me pretty miserable. I like that the PS5 at least looks like a PS5 game box. You know, that's something.
Oh yeah, those Series X boxes, man, they drive me mad. That little black bar they've put just underneath the cover. Well, come on now. Give me something. I want to line it up on a shelf and feel like I've got something new, not just homogenous Xbox.
Well, you know,
that's the last bit I want.
I mean, we haven't got time to play any of the games we buy because we're too busy playing Game Pass stuff. So it'd be nice to at least be able to look at them and like register that I've purchased something for a new machine. You know, that's all I ask. That's all I ask. I ain't gonna play it. So just give me that.
Oh, God damn. Oh, well, I suppose we should stop this endless conversation about game boxes and start talking about Game Pass.
Sounds good.
Okay, we've got 2 new additions to the Xbox Game Pass service this week, and they are NHL 21 as part of EA Play and Rain on Your Parade. So, just the 2 games, another sports title, because Game Pass loves its sports right now, and a charming little indie adventure as well. Not a terrible lineup. Easy to beat them both, if nothing else.
Yeah, exactly. I think it's a decent week. I kind of remain reasonably impressed with the speed that EA Player gives away its latest sports title. I think it's a pretty good kind of rate. Like, obviously, if you want the up to date content, you kind of have to buy them, but they seem to give out the game about 7 to 8 months later, which I think that's decent. Everyone gets a good few months to play the very latest one, and then that's kind of a lead into them buying the next one if they're really into it. I think it's a good pattern, and it's nice to see them come in, because it'd be very easy for them to just give you the the 1 year old version every time. But that's pretty nice. And then yeah, as you said, Rain on Your Parade, just nice little indie title. So not a bad week.
Not a bad week. I'm agreeing with you on EA's slight generosity when it comes to putting out their sports titles. Madden, that came after the football season had finished, so I suppose there's less generosity there. We all kind of know FIFA, when that comes out in May, most of the football season will have finished, but you do have the Euro Championships. The NHL season, the ice hockey season, is still going. These are the up-to-date squads. They're not even close to the playoffs yet. I still think they've got a month or so to get to it. So that's a really good pickup for any ice hockey fans. Like, that game is still very much up to date. That's pretty cool. So yeah, no, good for EA to putting that one in earlier than I thought they would. Really, they could have waited till July to put that in, but
yeah,
credit to them. Not too bad. But let's actually talk about NHL 21, because as anybody who listened to our sports special will know, we deceptively loved NHL 20. We were taken aback by how much that we did enjoy the sport of ice hockey in video game form, because up until then, I'd always kind of assumed it'd be really dull. And yet, no, it's not. It's very satisfying to play. Did you find NHL 21 did continue that upward trend, or have you now decided you hate ice hockey?
Yeah, I just hate it now, man. I'm over it. Nah, I mean, NHL 21 it's fine. Like, as we said in the sports special about when we were talking about NHL 20, this game series caught us off guard. It's actually very entertaining to play. It's got a great control scheme that I think is quite well thought out. And it also does a really good job of onboarding people with what ice hockey is. Like, you actually learn the rules quite quickly, which is something that it might sound a bit stupid to people who, if you grow up in a country where ice hockey's big, you'll just kind of pick this stuff up naturally. But over here, like, I've played ice hockey games on and off, like, whenever I get a chance over the last sort of 20 years or something, and I've never understood all the specific rules. They just, in older games, they just kind of flash up with no real thought of what happened. So it's nice to actually understand the game more now, which is good. But then you get to NHL 21, and look, I mean, it's the same game, which is good, because the NHL 20 was good, but this is one of the more uninspiring yearly sports updates for me that I've seen in a while. I mean, obviously we're kind of amateur players to this, but I see literally no changes from a gameplay standpoint for starters. I think it plays identically. So that's one thing. And then the other thing is that the only thing they really seemed to add was they added a bit more more goes on in your career mode now. So the mode where you pick one player to play as, and you just play his role in the team. And it's really fun to play the matches in that way, but they've kind of added a load of padding with like random conversations and stuff. And I basically just didn't like any of that. So yeah, I'm a little cold on NHL 21, but I do still think it's a really good game. If you jump into this fresh and you haven't played 20, you'll probably think it's great.
Yeah, that's the thing. NHL 21, I mean, usually when you get a yearly sports update, it tries to, when you play your first match, flag up its new features to try to very clearly spell out what is new about this version. NHL 21 had no need to. You could literally just start a game, and it was very, very hard to find anything different about the core gameplay. It's essentially the same. The only thing I found slightly different is some of the deeks, some of the tricks you can pull off are slightly simplified on their button presses. Some of them are even harder, which is just an absolute, some of those early tutorials trying to gain some of those deeks is just a nightmare. But other than that, yeah, I think it's the same game. I don't think there's anything different here at all. And as you mentioned, the only real changes are in the Be a Pro career mode. And yeah, I don't care for them either. These conversations are really stilted. There's no voice acting. So, it just feels awkward. It feels like a 1990s kind of story rather than a 2021 big budget EA game. I'd expect a bit of voice acting. There's no even really much of an introduction to it. You just kind of start, and then people are just talking to you through silent conversation boxes. There's not anything to hook you into it. And it's a little bit strange. It's a little bit odd. I mean, they're fine. I don't quite see what it does. It's always saying how you can build up your teammates' respect or your brand. And yeah, I don't actually see how that helps you in any particular way. nothing seems to change too much. Your teammates are just an absolute nightmare. Like, you know,
Yeah.
I had my guy, it was my first game in the NHL, and he's coming up to the rookie player and he's like, I'm going to bet you $1,000 you can't score a hat trick this weekend. And I'm pretty certain I can't score a hat trick.
Yeah, probably not, no.
It's very hard to score. So I was like, nah, man, I don't want to do that. And then he just called me a loser. I walked away. I was like,
Yeah,
this is bullying.
Yeah, like you were saying, obviously these interactions are all super weird because you see a cutscene, but it's just silent, and they're always the same cutscenes, and then like boxes come up to show you the text and stuff. And yeah, my teammates, again, same kind of thing. Like they only really pop up to give you some random outlandish task that if you succeed, they'll like you more. But again, it seems to have very little effect on what happens. But then also what mine seem to do, and I mean, look, I haven't looked in depth into the kind of salaries that a starting NHL player gets, but I bet it's some serious money. I bet these people are making bank every week. So what I've been getting a lot of is like they'll come up to me like the same teammate every time. They can only be bothered to get one teammate to talk to you. So he comes over and he's like, he says something like, "Oh, we're all gonna go bowling after training this week," and you'll be like, "Oh, sure, I'll come along to that," and then he'd be like, could you maybe get the hot dogs? We're all a bit short on cash. And it's like get the hot dogs. So then like if an option will come up where I can get the hot dogs, which will cost me like $20 and the teammates will like me more. And I'm like, what is this? Like, why is this man who's been in the NHL for like 5 years? He's a seasoned pro and he can't afford a hot dog, apparently. It's just so weird. And I just don't think they add anything. I think they just kind of pad out the time between you playing the game, which is what you want to be doing. And they don't have enough kind of flair or quality to them to be worth putting there. They look a bit embarrassing, frankly, compared to the sort of stuff you see in your Maddens and your FIFAs and stuff. These look like they're from a much lower budget company.
Yeah, it is a little bit cringy. The hot dogs is just fantastic. I'm absolutely thrilled. There's just this crisis of confidence over the hot dogs while you go bowling. I mean, that's just wonderful, but it kind of stems all over the place. The coach will come up to you during games and just give you shit for no real reason. Yeah. Sometimes they'll be like, "Oh, can you go out there and do something?" And you maybe don't do it quite as well, but you score 2 goals. And he pulls you aside after the match, which you've single-handedly won, and berates you for not doing the one thing he wanted you to. It's slightly odd. The whole system doesn't quite come together the way I expect it to. And also, I'd say the Be a Pro mode has where it grades you depending on what you're doing. So your attacking play, your defense play, and your teamwork. That seems to be very cruel now in terms of even if you're doing very well on one stat, even if you've got like a hat trick and, you're playing fantastic in attack, if you like give away 2 fouls, your overall performance is like a D. And I'm like, I gave away 2 fouls and scored 3 goals. And I've been absolutely hammered for it. It wasn't that cruel in NHL 20. For some reason, they've made it much harsher in this one. And I don't quite understand why they did that.
Yeah, well, I had a similar thing where it's almost like a culmination of all the things we just complained about brought together. But I had a match where I was like, I'd scored a hat trick and we like hammered this team. I think we were like 5-1 up or something. And then my coach was like, he specifically asked me to do some like poke checks where you kind of poke your stick into the poke to steal it. And he's like, "Oh, you're gonna have to do a few poke checks for some reason, even though I'm an offensive player and we're 5-1 up." So then trying to do that, I accidentally got a tripping foul. And then that saw my match rating plummet to like a C- overall, despite the fact I'd won the game on my own. And then he was like, "Oh man, it's not a great game out there for you this week." And it's like, what is this? Like come on, like really, it's just so massively focused on the fouls. Like everything else like ticks you up a tiny bit. You get a goal and your rating goes up a bit. And then, God forbid you get a foul because that's just like you had the worst game in the world. And that can't be how this sport works. It just can't be.
Well, especially when like 3 or 4 of your teammates will also end up in the penalty box over the course of the game. And you don't see them like, being paraded around the dressing room, just mocked mercilessly. Like it's just a very strange system they've got in place there. I don't want to rag on this game too much for that because the actual core gameplay is still fun. It's still very satisfying to slam a puck right into the top corner with a big badass slap shot. That's fantastic. It's still really fun for that. The speed of the game is still damn good, and the AI is pretty good as well. They're pretty useful. If you set them up an easy goal, they'll score it, which is fantastic. So it's all there. It's all good. But I don't care for the changes to the Be a Pro mode. I don't think they've added much. I feel like they started to do it, clearly the pandemic probably affected development somewhat and they just gave up. And this is what we got left with, this weird little framework, which is usually where you end up in like a Madden game after you've done all the fun bits. You get to this bit. This bit didn't even have the fun little glitzy story bits to it. So it's a step in the right direction, but it's not particularly enjoyable at the moment. Maybe they'll tighten it up for NHL 22.
Yeah, exactly. I'm kind of the same as you. I don't want to knock it too much because the core gameplay on the ice is still good. As you said, the attacking options in this game are great. It's the first hockey game I've played where I actually feel like I can properly aim a shot and make a real sensible decision on what I want to do to try and score, which is, vital to the game. So that's really good. I think it's got a great sense of like physicality about it. Like, if you notice an opportunity to like ram into someone against the wall, you can just do it and it feels natural. It feels like it happens as it would in real life. So that's all really good stuff. But that was all there in NHL 20. So yeah, good game overall, definitely. It's just a case of, if you're just a casual fan of NHL games, maybe you're already a season or two into NHL 20 and you're wondering whether you should move over to this one. You kind of don't really need to be honest. There's no massive urgency to move up to this. It's not a huge improvement. And also I don't believe it has any form of series patch, right? This doesn't have a Series X or Series S patch, whereas Madden did. Madden looked substantially better on the new consoles. So that's another thing that's missing.
Yeah, there is no serious patch, at least to what I'm aware of. The only reason I could say that you'd absolutely have to transition to NHL 21 is that the online mode actually has people playing it.
Yeah,
which is nice. It is nice. I had a few games of ones where it's just 3 players trying to score as many goals as they can against each other. And let me tell you, if you come up against a good player on NHL ones, it's like being on the playground. They just bully you. They just come along, they score about 3 goals, they're 3-0 up, and they spent the rest of the game just barging me over. Like I was a kid in the playground being picked on for my lunch money. It was almost hilarious by the time it had finished. Every time I stood up, he just barged me back down again. I felt like a proper bitch. It was really quite satisfying.
Yeah, I've been there with when they added NBA 2K21 about a month ago. I did the same thing. I kind of I raced through the career mode to get my wife the sheet, and then I was like, I'll have a quick game online, and then just get absolutely just shamed by people who actually play the game properly. Like but it's fair enough, I guess. They're taking their sports game seriously, and I very much am not. But yeah, the online stuff does look fun in this, so that is true. So it's nice that there is players there.
Yeah, there's loads of modes as well. You've got ones, you've got threes, you've got Ultimate Team. There's so much you can do in NHL 21. I love the variety of modes in this game. So, if you've not played one yet, you should jump in here. It's the most up-to-date roster, so you might as well. But if you are playing NHL 20 and as you say, you're thinking, should I drop all that progress to start again? Yeah, you probably don't have to. I think this is a worse game than NHL 20, but, the core mechanics of it are just as good. I gave it a 7 out of 10 on the sheet. That's not to say it's a bad game, but, it's just lacking in certain areas, and I think it could be tidied up for the next iteration.
Yeah, spot on. Same here. I gave this a 7 out of 10. I gave NHL 20 an 8 out of 10 because simply enough, this is mainly just a move sideways with some tiny improvements that haven't been fully thought out. So, it deserves to drop a point. But again, if you haven't played any of these games yet, it's a perfectly good jumping on point to enjoy them.
Okay, let's move on to our next title, which is Rain on Your Parade. This is a day 1 launch into Game Pass. Essentially, it's kind of a Donut County, Katamari Damacy kind of game where you're just causing destruction. You play as a cloud who rains on people's days and just shocks them, sets them on fire somehow, which I kind of love. And you're just there to ruin people's day. That's the entire game essentially. It also has a lot of game. What's the word? It's almost like a tributes. There's a lot of tributes paid to other games in different series as well, which get absorbed into the Rain on Your Parade formula. So what did you make of this? Is this as good as Donut County and Katamari, both games which we love?
It's a tricky one. I don't think it is. I don't think this is it's definitely not Katamari level good. It's probably not quite at the level of Donut County either. But I do like this. I think it's endearingly low budget, I would say. Like you can tell this isn't made by a studio with a ton of money. It's just it's quite a small game, quite simple art assets, kind of a lot of, simple, like easy menus and stuff. You can just tell that it's got that overall low budget feel to it. But I think they've came up with a solid concept for a game and they've just implemented that across like as many different ideas for short levels that they could think of. And I kind of appreciate that. I think, it's not a long game. Like, it'll realistically take you about maybe 2.5 to 3 hours to see absolutely everything that's here. It does have a new game plus option that kind of lets you go back through and do extra tasks, but I'm not counting that in the 2.5 hour timestamp there. And yeah, I think it's just a good fun game. It runs the right amount of time, I think. It feels like that's the natural point where they'd kind of done everything they could with this cloud. You kind of slowly gain powers over the course of the game, which is nice. So like, when you start this game, you basically are just a cloud that rains on people, and most of your objectives will just be stuff as simple as like, the first level, for example, you just rain on some people to spoil a wedding. Nice and simple, nothing crazy. And then as you go through the game more, you get kind of powers to do things with thunder and snow and tornadoes, and that just builds up the game to kind of be a bit more and more elaborate. And yeah, I don't know. I actually enjoyed my time with this. I don't think I would have enjoyed another 2.5 hours of Rain on Your Parade, but it ran the right length, and I'm always fine with that.
Yeah, it holds your attention for as long as you play it, doesn't it? There's no doubt about that. I mean, I mentioned Donut County and Katamari, but in many ways, I think it reminds me more of like an Untitled Goose Game, to be honest with you, where you have the objectives to scratch off your list. You've got certain things you can do. You can do bonus objectives if you wish to, but you don't have to progress in the level. There's a lot of that to be done. There's a lot of just playing in the level. They're usually quite small, quite contained, just to see what happens and what could annoy somebody. And that's kind of funny. And at times it is funny, raining on somebody's wedding. Good joke. Funny enough joke. Simple as that. It doesn't need to be special. There's an episode where somebody set a trash can on fire and the people ask you to put it out. And then just everything sets on fire, even the humans around it. And that's just bizarre. This game does encourage a bit of murder occasionally. You do get acid power-ups, and you could just rain acid on people. That's just sadistic as hell.
They have a point in the dialogue, because like this game's actually, it's got a few funny moments in its dialogue. It's pretty good, and they have a point where they like actively state that you're not hurting the people even though you're pouring acid on them, because they want like a young age rating on the game. So that's it's quite nice. Yeah, you're not harming them. You're just spraying acid in their face, so it's fine.
It's perfectly fine. I mean, you have trails of fire you could start with, like oil, and you could just start a trail of fire and just capture everybody in it and just set everyone on fire. You can be really sadistic in this game if you want to be, and you kind of will want to be. There's entire levels about just burning down a factory, which is very fun. It's kind of ridiculous, They do enough wrinkles on the formula each time. There are dead on 50 levels, as the game makes a very, very clear joke of. There is 50 levels exactly to play through. And yeah, they usually do find enough wrinkles on the formula for it to stay interesting, to stay inviting. There are times where it's a little bit simplistic and, it's perhaps not as funny as it was 20 levels ago. But there are occasions where, these tribute levels, these big reference levels, which crop up all the time. There's all sorts of them, from Breakout to Metal Gear Solid, of all things, to an entire Legend of Zelda parody, which is just outlandishly over the top. So even Plants vs. Zombies. Like, there's a lot of parodies in this game. And some of them are really fun, and some of them I wasn't quite as keen on.
Yeah, I agree with that. I have to say, like, when I got to like the first big parody I saw in this was the Metal Gear one, and it kind of got me. I don't know. I was pleasantly surprised. I was really happy with it. I thought it was really cool. Even the layout of the level was clever. Taking a good tribute to Metal Gear with the way you had to play it. And then as you went on, there's just some that feel like they're maybe either a bit of a stretch in terms of trying to be a tribute to that game. Or, to be honest, one of the big issues I have as this game goes on is that the best part of Rain on Your Parade is jumping into a level, you've got your objective list, and then like 2 minutes later, you've basically done the objectives, you've had a fun time, and you're on to the next level. Now, when you get near the end of the game, they do start putting together a few levels that start to take more like 10 minutes, and that kind of lost me a bit. There's a big kind of tower defense inspired level near the end that I was just desperate for it to end. There's a big dungeon crawling parody one that just goes on again a bit too long, and like nothing that's there is bad. It's just that like near the end of the game they just lose touch a bit with, I think, what actually makes this game fun. So a few missteps there, but I wouldn't want to hold it against them too much. I think on the whole, the creativity in the levels and the parodies they've done are actually pretty good.
Yeah, on the whole, they are quite fun. There are weak ones, you know. There's a parody of Katamari Damacy. You don't want to parody a game you're kind of on the same wavelength of and not be
Mm,
as good as it. That's never a good idea. Don't parody something that you're kind of the same thing as and be
yeah.
worse than it. So that game wasn't particularly much fun. There's a Doom level you can play like hidden in the menus, which is cool. I appreciate that they're trying it, but it also sucks. You know, it is just what it is. And the Zelda level just drags and
Doesn't end, does
drags
it?
and
Yeah.
drags, and it's miserably dull. So and I accidentally quit out of it with 2 minutes to go, and I just didn't beat it. I couldn't care less. I just fobbed it off and carried on with the other main levels.
Mm,
There are branching paths. You don't need to play every level to finish the game, which is good. So if you do get bored by something, you can just quit out and
yeah.
move on. But on the whole, you won't be bored with Rain on Your Parade. When you do get tornado powers and you're blowing everything into just a giant tornado and bursting through places and capturing everything, that's fun. It's cool, man. It's good.
Yeah.
There's just times when it perhaps loses its way. There's boss battles, which I'm not massively keen on, where the objectives are don't take damage, and it's pretty tricky to not take damage. I mean, you could do it, but who the hell wants to? There's a lot of those sort of things where it just kind of drags a bit at me. But on the whole, I think it's a charming effort. Very low budget, as you mentioned. I love the fact that the cloud is on like bits of string
Yeah,
and just
nice.
moving about. That's very cool. And there's some really inspired levels. I think the actual non-parody levels are probably better than the parody ones, which I didn't expect. I thought I'd enjoy the parodies more, but there's an entire level where you're ruining a restaurant and you're just pouring sewage into somebody's glass. And that's funny. I like that. It's a
Yeah.
good joke. As
No,
you say,
that's
some of
fair,
the
yeah.
dialogue is pretty funny in this. Some of the dialogue is real good.
Yeah, exactly. Like that's it. I think for the budget they've got there and the team they've got, I think they've come up with a fun idea for a game. Which, like we said, there's things that you can see the inspiration in it. Like Katamari, Donut County, Goose Game, but they've kind of went their own way with it. Like being a cloud that rains and snows on people. That's a clever idea, and I just think they've done a really good job of it. Like I'd definitely be interested to see what comes next from them. I think they've clearly got some good creative people there, and they know how to work a small budget in a kind of charming way. Like I wasn't playing this thinking like, oh, I wish this had more money behind it. I think it's perfectly correct as it is. It looks like just simple and cute, and that's nice.
Yeah, no, they spend the money wisely. The whole game has very much its own feel. And I respect that, and I think it's very much worth a play. I don't think it's an essential play by any means, but it's such a short game and it's such a small download that you might as well treat yourself to a level or two and just see how you take to it. You might love it, you might not. The overall goal, by the way, is just a fantastic joke of this cloud wants to get to Seattle, where it always rains, so it can be with its natural people. I love that as a joke.
Yeah, that's
and
great.
The game just blurs it up in giant letters that is trying to get you to the secret place of Seattle. And I love that. I think that's really funny. The whole game is framed as a story between the dad and his kid. And the dad can't be asked to come up with a good story. And the kid's not really enjoying it either. And then the whole thing is just this ludicrous farce all the way through it. There's cool stuff here. I like this game in many ways.
Yeah, I'm exactly the same, man. I think this is a really good effort. I've gave it a 6 in the end, which might sound a bit harsh compared to the way we've talked about it, but it's a very simple game. It's if you don't like the first 20 minutes, you're not going to like the rest of it. They do a good job of stretching that idea as long as they can, but in terms of actual gameplay variety here, it's not going to go anywhere too crazy, too wild from what you see at the start. So I think a 6 is fair, but as I said, it's such a short game that I recommend everyone give it a go. It's just small download as well, which is another win. So yeah, worth a try.
Worth a try. I gave it a 6 as well. It could be a 7 if it's your type of game, but I don't think it's as good as Donut County, which is on the service, and I would recommend people play ahead of this game. But well worth your time if you're a fan of that sort of wanton destruction genre. It's a decent time. One more quick PSA for what is coming soon to Game Pass. I feel like we've mentioned that MLB The Show 21 is coming to Game Pass 100 times at this point, but it continues to be coming to Game Pass. It's here on the 20th of April, so tomorrow, if you're listening to this immediately, or it may already be out, you can pre-download it. I have all 72 gosh darned gigabytes of it. Ooh. So I'm ready to swing my bat and do some baseball, which I assume is just rounders. But big.
Yeah, it is just big rounders. So yeah, we'll do some big rounders this week, and obviously talk about our next week's show. That should be good. And yeah, obviously, would you a big big announcement of the next pile of games soon too. So we'll announce those as soon as we have them.
Okay, let's move on to our leaving soon titles. Now, these have been very freshly announced. We expect them to be leaving around the 30th of April. Could be the 1st of May. We haven't had official confirmation from Microsoft yet. We'll update that on our Twitter accounts when we get it. But we have 4 confirmed titles to be leaving, and they are For the Kin, Fractured Minds, Levelhead, and Moving Out. So, very indie-heavy list of games this week. What did you make of them?
Yeah, I mean, I don't think this is too bad of a list in terms of, if people want to try and get through these games in time. Most of them have a fairly short playtime. I'm now through 3 of them, which we'll be talking about this week. The only one I haven't got to yet is For the King, which For the King's a weird one because I think it's a game that, you can technically finish a round of, but it's more of a kind of, rogue light adventure type deal where you can just play it again and things will be different next time round. So I think, it'll be fine for us to get through one. So apparently that takes about 8 hours or so. So we'll be doing that through the week. But the rest of them, I mean, Moving Out, only about 5 hours long. Fractured Minds is literally 20 minutes long. And then Levelhead feels like it takes a long time, but it really doesn't actually take that long. It's, again, more like about a 5-hour deal. So yeah, not bad for people who, need to play them all because they're stupid like we are.
Yeah, if you are an idiot, there's plenty of time to get these games played through. As Andrew has, I've played through 3 of these as well. Not got round to For the Kin yet, partly because its subtitle is Roguelike Tabletop Adventure, which is 3 words I absolutely hate. So, I am not invested in For the Kin. I'll be trying to fob that one off as soon as humanly possible because I do not want to play it. But the other 3 games are interesting enough in their own ways, all fairly simple completions. We'll be talking about them this week. So we've got Fractured Minds, Levelhead, and Moving Out to come. And next week, I'll play For the Kin because apparently I have to because I made this stupid decision, even though I don't want to play it. So let's move on to our first game this week. Let's talk about Fractured Minds. Now, as you mentioned, this is a very short art school project, essentially. And it's an investing kind of game. It's actually much more interesting than you'd think something that only runs 30 minutes can be. There's a lot to like it.
Yeah, exactly. Fractured Minds is a really good, interesting title to come to Game Pass. There's nothing else like it on the service. It's effectively a 20-minute, short experience. It's a game just about, you walk about, you interact with a few basic things across the course of like 7 levels. And it's intended to just kind of give an impression of depression and how that would feel to a person. And for what it is, it's interesting enough. It's the entire game was a solo project by a student who was only 17 at the time, and I think for that, like it's pretty fantastic, to be honest. Like I make games for a living, and when I was 17, I sucked at making games. So this is way beyond something I could have done at that time. So I think it's a really good effort.
Oh yeah, absolutely. For a person's first video game, this is very, very impressive. To be fair, I mean the fact it's made it onto Xbox Game Pass is even cooler. Still,
Yeah,
can you imagine being
really
17
cool.
and Microsoft is paying you to put your game on their service? How
Yeah.
fantastic is that? So yeah, there's a lot of goodwill behind this title. It's essentially a survival horror, even though there's not really much in the survival mechanics. It's trying to be scary, and to be fair to it, it does have an atmosphere. It is kind of spooky. Lights go flickering. There's the depression setting of it means there's a fugue to the whole thing. And there's a wonderful lead antagonist design, which I absolutely love. Just the person who's haunting you all the way through this, just this smiley face. And it's just really creepy in a way that a lot of creature designs just aren't. I found this ridiculously simple enemy design more scary than a lot of AAA horror games, which is quite impressive, to be fair. That's good character design. That's thinking about what works within your world. So yeah, I think there's a lot to like here, and it's such a short playthrough that you might as well give it a go. I mean, Christ, why not give it a go? Give it a play. Why not? It's 45 minutes, if that.
Yeah, exactly. I mean, realistically, you can probably do a completely blind playthrough of this game in half an hour, and then by my count, you'll probably miss a single achievement in that time. So if you really want to chase that up, pop an achievement guide up, spend 5 minutes jumping back in one of the levels with chapter select, and you can get that as well. So if you like your game score, that's 1,000 game score in well under an hour. And yeah, you just get to experience this quick, interesting story by a pretty cool solo developer. So I massively recommend it just for that alone. It's you can literally have it done in 20 minutes, half an hour as well. So there's no reason to not give it a try, I think.
Yeah, I mean, it's not for me to say if it's a particularly realistic depiction of mental health. I don't personally suffer with any mental health troubles, so it certainly feels authentic. It certainly feels very real. It certainly feels very personal. So I think if you have somebody who has suffered with that or know somebody who has, you may find it quite affecting in that sense. It's certainly a better portrayal of mental health than Hellblade, Senua's Sacrifice, which is also on this service. So kudos to you, solo developer. You shit all over that tripe. So, that's quite impressive. I'm pretty pleased with that. And I will say, I like this idea of short, tiny video games coming to Game Pass for two reasons. One, because it means I can beat it within 45 minutes and tick it off on the sheet.
Yeah, it
and
pads the sheet out wonderfully.
My own self-interest is I'm absolutely all for that. But I also do legitimately like the idea of Microsoft trying to triumph and promote smaller games which will run about 45 minutes to an hour, just as almost like a short section of the actual Game Pass service. In the same way that like an Apple Arcade sometimes has really tight and short experiences. I think it's a good idea. I think they could do more of these sort of things. I think it adds easy value to somebody's subscription without necessarily being particularly expensive purchases. They're not going to spend a lot to get a game like Fractured Minds on the service. But yeah, I actually think it adds considerable value. And having another 10 or 12 games like this as a curated section which updates, every few months, I think there's real potential for that to be something quite exciting.
Yeah, I agree completely. It's one of the great things about subscription services, isn't it? You can have a large variety of different media on there. It doesn't just have to be big blockbuster titles. You see this sort of stuff with stuff like Netflix. They have all kinds of different random stuff on there now because they can kind of just put out content because you're paying a subscription anyway. And I think, yeah, there's a lot of room for more stuff like this, more kind of 15 to 30 minute short experiences. There's a lot of talented indie developers out there making this sort of stuff, and it would be a great kind of home for it. It'd be a great way for Microsoft to kind of plant a flag in that whole just world of games that people don't really experience a lot of. Fractured Minds on the Xbox store is only, I think it's like £1.80, so it's probably $2 in the US. It's an absolute bargain, but I wouldn't have came across it. I just wouldn't have. I know I wouldn't have found this title and I wouldn't have played it. So I think it's great to get more of this stuff out there.
Yeah, I mean, essentially, I'm advocating for the Playdate system. I'm basically I just want Game Pass with a crank. That's all I want.
Yeah, just give me a crank. It's fine.
Just give me a damn crank, Spencer. That's all I want in life. So basically, I'm just saying I want a Playdate. Panic! Why won't you let me buy a Playdate yet? Where's that thing coming out? Give me that crank, dude.
Man, I'm so hyped for crank. I just want to just get crank all the time. It's just it's got to come out eventually. But yeah, one of these days. Anyway, we're completely getting sidetracked by the play date. but yeah, look, again, Fractured Mind's really cool. Well worth playing while it's on the service. And to be honest as well, I looked on the shop description for this game, and as I said, it's like £1.80. And there's a clear thing on there that states that I think 80% of any proceeds from the game go in directly to Emily Mitchell, the solo developer who made it, so that she can make more projects like this. So if you find that you enjoyed your time with it and you've got the money spare to chuck a couple of pounds at it, I think it's a good idea. It supports quite directly supports an indie developer in making more titles like it.
Yeah, absolutely encourage people to do that. I'll probably do the same myself once the show is over. I give Fractured Minds a 6 out of 10. I don't think it's by any means a revelatory experience, but it's enjoyable and it's good for what it is. And I'm very excited to see what Emily Mitchell pulls out next, because clearly there's a lot of talent there.
Yeah, absolutely. I'm the same here. 6 out of 10. It's because it's such a short experience. There's kind of very little for me to jump on that can elevate it higher than that. But again, we've recommended it here. I think it's well worth checking out.
Okay, let's move on to our next title, which is Levelhead. Now, Levelhead is essentially Super Mario Maker, but nowhere near as good.
Yeah, that's pretty much what Levelhead is. I mean, look, man, before we even really roll too much into the gameplay on Levelhead, I struggle at the best of times with playing games that are heavily based on user created levels. I don't know what it is, but I just if a development studio makes a game and they make all the mechanics, they set everything up, I kind of just want to play their levels. And I know that's a bit a bit kind of shitty, maybe, you know, because people make great custom content in stuff like Mario Maker, but I'm just not that interested. You know, I only really feel accomplishment by playing like developer made content in these games. So that's just kind of it. I don't know, you know, if we start playing user generated levels, we'll never bloody finish the sheet. But look, so, you know, even with Super Mario Maker, I'm not that enamored by playing custom levels. I played some, they were very cool, but I'm not going to spend day after day playing them. Now, when you take that and take away the entire fact that it's Super Mario and you're using all these legendary assets and gameplay styles and costumes and power-ups, and you just have this kind of, you know, unbranded cereal edition of like Mario, where it's just, you know, it's just some generic different thing that's been spun up out of nowhere. Like, any interest I had in it is then gone. And that's largely not the fault of the guys who made this game. Like, frankly, I actually think this is a decent effort. Like, there's a lot of creativity in the levels you can make. The game tells you, well, the game shows you all the things you can do throughout an excruciatingly long thing that they bill as a tutorial. And, you know, there's clearly a lot of cool stuff you can do with it, but I just have no reason to play custom content about Levelhead. You know, like, why would I play custom Levelhead content? I don't know.
Yeah, this is perhaps a problem unique to us. I, too, am not a massive lover of user-generated content. The closest I get to enjoying it is in something like Dreams, but Dreams is so ridiculously large of a level designer. You can make anything.
Yeah.
So, you know, that's beyond just, here's a load more 2D platform levels, which is all you can make in Levelhead, is just 2D platform levels. And I find the bigger problem with custom level creators is, a lot of the time, the thing that rises to the top with them are these ridiculously hard, almost sadist levels, which people have put together because they know it's incredibly tough to beat. And some people get a real joy out of that. I mean, you know, the Mario Maker community, some of the people who can beat these ridiculous levels in Mario are legitimately cool to watch, but it's no fun to play. It's just something to watch. And a lot of these games end up being something more for Twitch streaming to me rather than something I want to play. And I imagine Levelhead, I played a few custom levels, and it's kind of the same thing. The ones that rise to the top are just very difficult. And they are well designed, but they're designed to be tough. And I don't really want to spend an hour of my day trying to beat a Levelhead level, because clearly I have then lost all semblance of humanity. Because, you know, if I don't do it for Mario, why would I do it for you? And this is kind of the problem we're facing here.
That's exactly it, man. I just, you know, I don't gain anything by beating someone's very difficult custom Levelhead level. You know, what happens? I just beat some random content. Like, it's just not for me. And, you know, I like that people are making creative levels of it. I think for people who are enjoying that, that's great. That's awesome. You know, and again, the level editor does let you do loads of stuff. You know, just like Mario, there's different costumes you have with different abilities. There's cannons that fire you around the map, like in Donkey Kong Country, basically exactly like the ones from Donkey Kong Country. There's a bunch of different enemies. You can set up puzzles using like blocks or using like switches that turn lights on. It's got a really big, elaborate kind of system with the switches you can put down. It's almost like, you know, stuff you can do in Minecraft with Redstone, in that, like, you know, you can set up switches that are on different like channels, and then you can put different things in your levels that are responding only to that channel. And then you know, so you can kind of you can wire up all kinds of custom stuff using that system, which is, you know, it's awesome. It's really cool. It's really clever that they've put together such an in-depth editing tool. But again, that editing tool is for Levelhead. So that's my only issue.
Yeah, this is it. There is an incredibly deep level editor here, which you could create some quite incredible things. And the community has created some quite incredible things. I do question the logic of people spending that much time and effort and their obvious talent to make Levelhead levels. I feel like if you're that good, maybe you should just make your own game. You don't necessarily have to waste your life on Levelhead. But who am I to tell people what to do? I guess the bigger thing for us here, though, is that we mentioned that this is custom content. This game does have a giant slab of developer levels as well, which it builds as a tutorial which runs a mind-boggling nearly 90 levels if you was to play every single branching path, of which there are a lot of, and very tricky challenges to unlock them all. I mean, we mentioned at the top, this stretches the definition of tutorial to its absolute breaking point. And good God, it does. This is not a tutorial. This is a campaign.
Yeah, it's honestly, it's just crazy because I feel like everyone is a loser when you call this a tutorial because a lot of your players will ignore it, because if they know how a simple platforming game works, they'll think, well, I'm not going to mess around doing a tutorial. And clearly in this tutorial, they are trying to show you all the different types of things you can put in levels, but you can't do that over 100 levels. Like you can't, you have to strip that down a lot, like way down from that point. But then also, like, you're kind of hiding the fact that you've made 100 like developer levels here. Like, why not just put this on a page as a story or a campaign? Like, I'm not saying I was particularly enamored by playing 100 levels of Levelhead, but like at least present it the right way so that you know what you're getting into. Because, I turned this game on thinking, oh, what's in this tutorial thing? And then like 4 hours later, I'm going around this giant map still completing levels. That's not a tutorial. It's just a normal campaign. And it's a really weird misstep that they've built it as a tutorial.
Yeah, it's branded horrifically, which is ironic for a game which is all about branding and corporate overlords, because of course it's
Yeah,
about
why wouldn't
corporate
it be?
overlords. It's indie gaming. Somebody's either dead or there's a company. That's literally all there is nowadays. But the story is not. It's pretty inconsequential. You essentially play as a robot who delivers packages to people. I mean, I thought it was going to be a much more grounded experience. It's quite spacey and alieny rather than trying to get to Croydon, which I suppose is probably a better fit to me. Yeah, I don't know if getting to Croydon would be a good platforming game. Maybe it would, but it's probably not. And
Someone's probably made the level, so you can probably find it if you just search Croydon. It'll be there somewhere.
Be there somewhere. And essentially, these levels are just standard 2D platforming. It's deceptively tough, is Levelhead, is what I'll say. It expects a lot from the player. It's very precision, almost more like a Super Meat Boy than anything else. It's not like a Mario game, which is much more forgiving. This is proper, hardcore, quick reload, instant death kind of stuff. And it can get a little frustrating, to be fair.
Yeah, I agree. I mean, when you start this game out and you're doing, the first hour of the tutorial, let's say you've done the first hour of the tutorial there, and you're thinking, you're thinking this is all right. The platforming feels tight enough for what the game is. You kind of move around with a decent bit of pace. Your jump feels fairly natural, and then as you get into the back 3 or 4 hours of the tutorial, it's kind of then that you realize that as this game tries to do anything difficult, that platforming is just way too floaty. Like your left and right movements are they're just so difficult to get precise, especially when they want you to like jump over a gap by like bouncing off the heads of a bunch of flying enemies, or you need to stand on a moving platform that's only the size of like your character. It just starts to get a bit frustrating. That's really the point when when you really feel that this doesn't have the precision of a Meat Boy or a Mario 2D platformer. It's just a bit behind those. And obviously the problem is that I'm saying that you notice that more when the levels get difficult, and this is a game where people make levels, so they're all going to make really difficult levels. So I don't know, I can only assume playing that user content is just a world of frustration with the way this game handles.
Yeah, the further into the tutorial you go, the worse it gets. It really is. It does get to the point. You're right. The floatiness of the character is the problem. You don't ever quite feel in control of him. At least I didn't. And there's slight input lag on some of the button presses as well, which isn't ideal when you're trying to do very quick, rapid movements. And occasionally you'll have to chain 3 or 4 abilities together, and it'll just miss. And it'll be very frustrating when it does get all the way back to the start of the checkpoints, which become less frequent the further into the game you go. Somewhat cruelly, when they start demanding more from you, the checkpointing doesn't get any more intense, which is slightly harsh, I think. I'd prefer to see a few more there. There's just frustrations abounding. You press down to go through a platform, and when you want to go through a platform, it feels like it takes an age. And when you're just accidentally pressed down once, you go through it like you couldn't even believe to your death. And it's just little things like that where it just doesn't feel tight enough to be the kind of precision platform it desperately wants to be.
Yeah, exactly. I had the same issue. I every time I got to a bit where I needed to go down, I just instinctively pressed, like I held in down and pressed jump, because that just feels like the natural way to make that quick. But in this game, no, you just have to hold down for, again, as you said, what feels like an eternity at the time, because these levels in the tutorial are all ran against the clock as well. There's time trial kind of things to hit, which You ain't gonna hit many of them. I'll be honest. I think I got 4. I managed to do 4 in the end, and like one of them was right at the start of the game, and then a few of the other ones I just fluked a run where I somehow got it. But you're really not going to be getting many of them. You have to be pixel perfect for the whole game, and like it just, I don't know. Again, I just think that the game has got a lot of dressing around it that suggests it wants to be a hardcore game, but the core mechanics don't fit it simply enough. They're just not quite fit for purpose.
Yeah, and there's also problems with, you mentioned time trials. This game does have a lot of different modes and not modes, different objectives to complete in each level. You may need to collect all the coins or the coin stand-ins in this game, or defeat all the enemies, or do it quick enough, or collect 4 little icons which make a different thing, like the con letters, for example, in the Donkey Kong Country game, or even find some robot dudes who've been left behind. And when you go onto a level on the overworld map screen, it's very hard to tell what you've actually done. It doesn't give you an indication of how many coins you'd got on your last attempt. It doesn't let you know if there's a robot dude hiding in there. It's just all kind of vague, and it makes going back to levels a bit of a misery because I don't know how close I came on some of them. It's like I could go back and try and finish this, but I don't know how well I did. And if I'm just wasting my time trying to do something I'm not going to be able to do. And it could just do with tightening up that a little bit as well, along with the fact that the overworld is just too big. Moving around it is just a slog. It goes on and on and on. I want to find like a level select button where I could just go through a list of the menus, list of the levels, and just pick the ones I've not done everything on. Instead, I've got to move my ship all the way around the map, and it's just miserable to do. So even, playing as a completionist will be a bit annoying as well. I mean, the achievement list in this game, I don't often talk about achievements because they don't really matter. Ultimately, they don't really matter, but I've never played a game with a more stringent, nasty set of achievements than Levelhead.
Yeah.
Pretty much summarized by the fact that 0.2% of players have even beat 30% of the campaign, or the tutorial, should I call it?
The tutorial course, yeah.
It's crazy how low that figure is when you think, it's an Xbox Game Pass game. A lot of people will have given this a go, and none of them can be bothered to play it because it's too difficult and just too cumbersome to get around.
Yeah, exactly. I mean, I'm similar to you in that, I like achievements as a thing to shoot for. If I'm playing a game anyway, I'll kind of check the list and see what's going on there and see if there's any fun things to pick up along the way. But I'm not necessarily obsessed with them. But it still hurts. It still stings when you're playing a game for this many hours. You're really plugging away at that tutorial for 5 hours, and you just get nothing for it. Like, again, we beat the tutorial / campaign. And the little meter on the game says we've really only done 25% of it because we didn't collect a crap ton of extra coins and find these secret hidden robots in the levels and do these insanely impossible almost time trials. Like, it's just so insanely stingy. I'm not even asking for much. Just maybe just the odd achievement for, you've beat 10 levels, you've beat 20, you've reached the end of the tutorial. Like, just something like that. It's just anything. Like, I mean, it's just, I don't know, it kind of, it sucks a bit trying to trudge through this at the best of times anyway, frankly. So I wouldn't have minded a little lift, just a little pop up being like, there you go. There you are, mate. Enjoy that. But no, nothing, just misery.
Just and that's the problem with Levelhead here. By the time I finished my 6th or 7th hour with the tutorial, I felt like I'd had enough of it, really. I didn't want to play any more Levelhead. And the game was encouraging me to play no more Levelhead. All it could tell me to do is go play other people's Levelhead. And I don't want to do that. And so the whole thing just feels like a redundant package by the time you finished it. I mean, I didn't get out the tutorial, Andrew. All I played of this game was the tutorial. And that's all I could stand. So frankly, after that, I could only say this is a 5 for me. It's just not particularly enjoyable, and the story and the dialogue, it just annoys me as well. Like, there's an annoying song which comes up all the sodding time, which can just die in a ditch. So yeah, I'm pretty content to never play this again.
Yep, I'm exactly those things. I'm at a point now where I noticed there is an actual achievement I almost have, which is for beating 5 time trial times, and I beat 4, and I'm still not going to bother doing it. I just can't. I can't do it. I can't try and do one of those levels. But look, I mean, Levelhead, it's almost there, right? Like, I think they've done a great job with the engine, like the level creation suite they've got here. I just wish I was using that creation suite. Well, I wish someone was. I can't be bothered, but like I wish that creation suite was for just a slightly tighter product, really, you know, or just something completely different, even, you know, like we have level creation stuff for platformers. I mean, let's be honest, if Mario has done it, you know, if you've got Mario Maker and you can make Mario levels, do you really want to get in that market? Like, I don't know, make a creation engine for a different type of game. That could be fun. Like, I don't see a reason for somebody to spend a lot of time with Levelhead, and I certainly don't see a reason for them to spend 8 hours trying to power through the tutorial, because it's just a bit, you know, it's insufferable. So yeah, I'm at a 5 out of 10. It really, it's not awful here. It really isn't. I just think it's a bit of a misstep from a conceptual level, simply enough. You know, I think they're a decent studio, and this just isn't something that people need right now.
Absolutely. Okay, let's move on to our final game this week, and that is Moving Out, a game about moving houses.
Yeah, moving out. So this is very much a, you know, if you take Overcooked and instead of cooking meals, you move people out of houses. That's exactly what moving out is. This is a game that can be played on your own, but certainly is not the best way to play it. You want 2 to 4 people for this, not like normally. And yeah, you just kind of, you know, you show up with your moving company. You're all just a bunch of crazy idiots, and you just kind of smash everything up while you try to put it in your truck, because the goal is to do that as quick as possible. And yeah, you know, fun, simple gameplay mechanic, and it comes together pretty well. Again, provided you have people. This game falls off real fast if you play it on your own, has to be said. But if you've got some good friends to play with, you can have fun here.
Yeah, the solo experience is somewhat limited, but there is joy to be had. There's fun in throwing a box through a window. That will never not be fun, and it makes a very satisfying crack. There's a fun way that when you untangle a toaster or a fridge, the wire has like a bit of resistance before it snaps and you can finally move it. That's nice, good little kind of tactile game design. I like that. Everything feels like it has a weight to it, which I quite enjoy. I'm moving big, heavy objects through these buildings with one person is an absolute nightmare. But then again, it would be. If you've ever tried to move a fridge on your own, that sucks. And it sucks in this game too. So is at least realistic to the core principles of moving, which I respect, if nothing else. There's madcap fun to be had here. As you say, it's very overcooked. Some of the wonky kind of physics kind of reminds me of a physics game like a Goat Simulator or Totally Reliable Delivery Service. But this game is actually fun, which helps significantly with that. You know, these physics they're a little bit playful, but they're not actively trying to screw you over, which I much prefer. So there's good stuff here and there moving out. I think it's a decent experience.
Yeah, no, I agree completely, man. I think, you know, as long as you've got, you know, like I said, some friends to play with is ideal. I think if you play on your own, you can play for a bit. You can do a few levels every now and then, but this wouldn't be one that I'd be looking at, you know, now that it's leaving the service in you know, a week and a half from this point. I wouldn't be thinking I'm going to get my head down and hammer through all the levels on my own. I think if you got friends, play it now. If you don't, it's just not quite worth your time. But nonetheless, you know, they do a good job in here. I think the levels are pretty creative. They kind of build up quite nicely from, you know, you start off with your pretty standard stuff like, here's a house, we're gonna move people out of the house. It'll go along from that to start involving, you know, there'll be like switches you have to press to open certain rooms. There'll be haunted houses with ghosts that try and get you. By the end of the game, it just goes off in all kinds of wacky directions, which, you know, I won't spoil here, but it's pretty fun. It stretches just like Rain on Your Parade. To be fair, it stretches its idea out as long as it can and as far as it can, and then kind of shuts up shop when it runs out of ideas. Simply enough. So again, you know, that's good.
That's about all you can ask from a title like this. As you say, yeah, there is a lot of different variety in the places you move out from. I appreciate that. The puzzle solving is quite fun as well. There are certain ways you have to attack each move, and you need to do it in a correct kind of order to hit those best times to get as much stuff on as quickly as possible. You know, trying to beat your best times on this game is pretty fun because it's so frantic and so fast. You know that even just a slight misstep if a box hits a wall instead of a window, you may have lost your gold medal time. And that's kind of cool. It adds a pressure to each little bit of a gameplay that you do. I think there's quite a bit to enjoy here. It also has the indie trope of evil corporation, which I just wish it didn't, because of course it does. I mean, Christ, there's 2 indie games here, and 2 of them have evil corporations in them. I mean, for God's sake, can we stop? So there's a lot of videos, and everybody's very joyful about the fact they're being underpaid, and I get the joke. I I understand the joke. It's just I've heard this joke about 700 times at this point. This
Yeah.
probably does it slightly better than the others in this genre, which
Yeah,
I
I agree.
practically classify it as now. But
Yeah.
even still, it's a bit reductive.
Yeah, I mean, it's quite frustrating when it's such what should be a rarely used concept. We can actually sit here and be like, looking at stuff we've played in Game Pass alone, this probably does that gimmick better than Levelhead and probably better than Journey to the Savage Planet. Like, there shouldn't be this many games that you can list out that do the exact same joke, but nonetheless, there is. The Outer Worlds, that's another one that does the same joke. But yeah, look, again, good fun to be had. One thing I would say in this one is if you are playing this with multiple players, is you're going to want to make sure those are players that are somewhat happy to actually play the game and like do it properly, because as this game will teach you in its first level, like other players in the game can just like slap you in the face and punch you and make you spin out and you drop the stuff. Like, this isn't one to kind of maybe try and play with your kids and see if they can help you through some levels, because they'll probably just slap you in the face till you turn the game off, frankly. So, definitely a fun multiplayer game, but you got to find the right players. If you don't, you're gonna have an awful time.
Yeah, you definitely want to find the right folk to play this one with you. And definitely as well, there's a lot of secret objective in this, mainly around getting animals in the truck. And so enjoy trying to build elaborate pens within a truck to keep these sodden things from leaving, which is very frustrating because there's nothing worse than getting a sheep on a moving truck. You go to move the fridge and the sodden sheep's escaped, and you've got to get it back on the truck. I mean, if that sounds like a kind of wacky, ridiculous scenario that appeals to you, you're probably going to love moving out, to be fair. There's a lot to enjoy here. I quite liked this game. I played it on a Switch, I believe. I think I own this one on Switch, as well as Good Job, which is essentially the same game. So we're all just making the same game now. We've hit that point. Indie gaming is just one homogenous blob. But this particular piece of the blob, I think, is okay.
Yeah, no, I agree, man. I played about half of this with my girlfriend and then half on my own. Massively enjoyed the half where I played with someone more than the half where I didn't. One thing you can do, which is a really good tip for this one, is it has these assist mode options, which basically they're kind of meant for accessibility reasons, but they do stuff like they make it easier to carry stuff on your own, so you move faster when you're carrying heavy objects on your own. They can increase the timers on the levels so that you have longer to get gold medals. Like, if you're playing on your own in particular, do take a look at those, because they just make the game better, simply enough, especially the one with moving heavy objects. Like, if you play in the single player, and I don't know if you just powered through without this on, Josh, but if you play the single player and you don't have that assist mode on, dragging a bed will take the entire time it would normally take to get gold medal. So I found those assist mode options pretty essential, and they don't turn off achievements either, so they can be used without any bother. But yeah, I mean, look, I came out giving Moving Out a 6 out of 10. This is, I'd say upgrade that to a 7 if you've got the right players to play with. This is a really good, fun, cooperative multiplayer game. It's one of the best options for that type of gameplay on Game Pass. If you're playing on your own, drop that 6 more to a 5 or a 4. Frankly, it's really not a great time, especially if you try and hammer it all out in the space of a week and a half. It's just a bit tedious on your own eventually. But yeah, good stuff.
Yeah, I gave this a 6 as well. I played this entirely on my own. I did quite enjoy it. I still thought it was fun. I did whack those assists on. I was very quick to make sure I did that, because this game, in terms of actually getting medals and times as well, you just can't do it on your own unless you whack those assists up to make it a little bit simpler for yourself. So don't feel like you're failing. I actually think the developers would rather you did that to, enjoy the experience correctly. Yeah. Is this as good as another kind of like co-op fanatic game like Overcooked 2, which is also on Game Pass? No, I think Overcooked has a bit more of its own flair to it, and it has a bit more enjoyability to it. So I'd pick that over Moving Out. But if you are looking for a co-op focused game, you've got some buddies around and you want to play something silly, this is a decent time. As Andrew said, I wouldn't necessarily say it's a must-play solo game. It's okay. It's fine, but you're not going to love it. If you're trying to beat all of Game Pass, there's worse things to be playing, like, Levelhead. But ultimately, it's okay. But a 6 out of 10, decent enough time.
Yeah, definitely. And I think one thing to say as well is that the tutorial in Moving Out is only about 5 minutes long, so it's not 8 hours, which is quite nice. So that's something to enjoy. All right, then. So let's close out the show as always with a bit of news, and we got a couple of good stories this week. We've obviously got the Nintendo Indie World Showcase that was on, so we're going to run through the highlights of that, run down the games that were announced and talked about there, and then also a bit later on we're going to have the Resident Evil Showcase, so a bit more information on Resident Evil 2. So let's open up then with the Nintendo Indie World Showcase, which, first of all, quite disappointed these aren't just called Nindies anymore. I thought Nindies was a cool little name, but whatever. It's Indie World Showcase now. And yeah, I mean, the top line thoughts on the show, Josh. How did you find this 20-minute dash of games?
I much preferred it to the 4-hour version that Microsoft put out a few weeks ago. I feel like these games are much more enjoyable when you just quickly blast through them and tell me what they are in a colorful palette for 20 minutes. Xbox, if you are listening, this is how you do an indie showcase. You shouldn't be taking advice from Nintendo, for God's sake. I don't trust Nintendo to sort of cook a can of beans, and yet they can put an indie showcase together. This is how you do it. It's a fun, breezy 20 minutes. It's actually a pretty good show to watch as well. There's some good games involved in this.
Yeah, no, absolutely. I mean, I agree completely with, this is a much better setup. I mean, if you're showing me indie games in particular, I mean, it doesn't matter what games you show me. I don't need a 4-hour showcase where you interview people for half an hour at a time. But, if you're going to show me some colorful, quick indie games, this is the way to do it. I love that Nintendo Direct style structure anyway that this follows, where it's like you see a trailer, someone gives you a quick, snappy line about it, and then they just flash on the next kind of image of the game you're about to watch, and you watch that as well. It's easily the best kind of produced gaming showcase that we get. It's a lot better than Sony's State of Plays, and it's a hell of a lot better than watching 19 hours of someone talk on Twitch about a fishing game. So yeah, definitely beats those. But look, I mean, let's run through the games. We'll run down all the games that were announced at the show and talked about at the show. We're missing a few off at the end because they had a typical kind of indie show reel where they just blasted about 50 images at you at the end. And there's not a lot to say about those games because they didn't show a lot on them. But let's open this up with how they opened it up then, which was with Road 96. Is it Road 96 or Route 96? Road 96 sounds weird.
I think it might be Route 96, yeah.
Road 96. No, it's Road 96. So first comment on that game is they named it so weirdly we had to check, which is nice. But yeah, look, Road 96 then. So this is a procedural narrative adventure they're billing it as. This is kind of like I don't know, it looks like your typical kind of story-based narrative games, except for it just totally makes up a new story every time. It seems to be always based around a road trip. So you're on the road. That seems to be the reason you are there seems to change. You're on the run from something, you're escaping somewhere, you've just ran away from home, things like that. And yeah, along the way, you meet characters that will sometimes help you. They'll sometimes have fun with you. They'll sometimes, do bad things and you have to get away from them. And I don't know. I mean, I think this is an interesting concept, but I do greatly worry about whether it's going to actually build any fun, cohesive stories in the end. I don't know about you. I just think there's only so much you can put down to like random generation. And I just don't know if it'll lose its soul a bit.
Oh, yeah. I think the actual idea behind this is pretty cool. I think the way they're linking it all together is quite nice. But ultimately, do I believe you can tell an enjoyable and cohesive narrative when you're not certain what path people are going to take? Nah, not really. I mean, choose your own adventure novels aren't exactly famed for being literary classics. People aren't putting, Goosebumps, choose your own adventure alongside The Great Gatsby. And they're doing it for very good reason because, you need to have a creative control over a narrative for it to work. You can have branching paths in video games and people love that, even though I'm not massively keen on it. People do love to influence conversations here and there. But ultimately, you are being railroaded alongside a narrative design. And you will be to some extent in Road 96. I'm not saying like it's going to be completely freewheeling, anything can happen. But I do fear that certain things are just going to clash when they shouldn't necessarily crop with each other because you've made a weird decision. And I just wonder, it's all going to be a little bit surface level. If you're writing this many narrative branches, you can't give them that much attention. And so therefore the writing will be diluted because of it. Again, cool idea. And I will give them the biggest praise in the world if I can play this game and have the most boring road trip possible, where nothing happens for 4 hours. That I would give them a 10 out of 10 if I just sit on a bus for 4 hours. And every time, do you want to make a decision? Nah, I'm just going to sit. I would get, I'd love that. That to me would be totally different.
I mean, that's it. Like, I think on the trailer they showed a number of how many like different connotations can happen. It was something wild, like 140,000. You know, because obviously there'll be tiny minor things that could go differently each time, and things like that. And that's great. But yeah, you've got to think at least one of those is just I pop in a car to go somewhere and I get there and it's done. Like there's got to be at least one where literally nothing happens. But yeah, I don't know. Again, I agree with you. I think this is a cool idea. I'm interested to keep an eye on it. It's one I'll definitely be interested in reading up on, like reviews and thoughts on this as it gets closer to release, because I don't know. It would take something special for it to be something that I'm, going to jump into myself, unless of course it comes to Game Pass, and then I'll have to. but still always happy when people are trying new stuff. So I wouldn't want to dunk on it too much.
Yeah, no, I hope it's good. I just don't think it will be.
Yeah, exactly. Okay then. Well, next game was Aerial Knight Never Yield. Don't know if the game's actually called that or if it's just the creator is Aerial Knight. It was a little unclear. But this is basically just an endless runner game, which is set in a kind of futuristic version of Detroit. And, it's got your pretty standard endless runner flair. You're going to like use kind of parkour moves to jump over stuff and slide under stuff. And yeah, it's got a cool sense of style to it. It sounds like the soundtrack's going to be pretty great. But beyond that, I don't know, man. It's an endless runner. I kind of played enough of these about 15 years ago. I'm not sure.
I like a good endless runner. Maybe I'm just sick in the head, but I quite like these games. I think they're quite fun. And I think this game has a really cool art style. Yeah. I think it looks pretty fun. It looks quite stylish in the way it's built its world. And this idea of this twisted, mangled, futuristic Detroit is pretty cool as well. I love the fact it's focusing on like a trip-hop soundtrack. Not enough games do. And I find it kind of strange, particularly in the endless runner genre, which probably suits it quite well. So I think the soundtrack alone could be an interesting reason to be excited about this game. I think there's enough to get excited about. I do know the developer is Aerial Knights. So it is Aerial Knights' Never Yield. So he's doing my favorite thing where he's putting his name in the game title. I love when people do that. I wish Phil Spencer would do that. Phil Spencer's Halo Infinite. Just stick your name in, Phil. Just do it. Take all the glory.
Yeah, that's fair. I mean, yeah, as I said, it looks like it's worth a look. I'm interested to see how it turns out. It's out in pretty soon. It's out on May 16th, so not long to wait for that one. But yeah, let's move on then. So next title was Last Stop, which is a game published by Annapurna Interactive, who only publish things that are good. That still seems to be the case. I haven't seen a single game that wasn't good from them yet. And yeah, this was a pretty cool trailer. I'm struggling to quite pin down what the game is so far. It seems to be set in, it's got like a very British setting to it. It seemed to have some kind of sci-fi stuff going on where people had woken up and they'd either swapped bodies or everyone saw them as the other person and they were kind of trying to make sense of that. The trailer had a lot of kind of creepy undertones to it. There's obviously some big thing going on with like potentially aliens or some kind of conspiracy. And yeah, I don't know. I mean, cool trailer. I just don't quite know what it is yet.
It looks a bit like Freaky Friday, the game. And if this is just some giant bait and switch and Lindsay Lohan turns up halfway through and I'm just on a madcap adventure with Jamie Lee Curtis, frankly, I'd be okay with that. Yeah, I'd play that. Look, it's an Annapurna game. It'll be good. They're pretty much all good. Yep. So, you don't need to show me anything. You could just put Annapurna's director of whatever the heck just taking a shit and I'd probably still buy it because they're very good.
No, I totally agree, man. That works for me. This is out in July, so not too long to wait. And yeah, it will probably be good. So next game, this one's out in 2021, but is again by Annapurna. We have even less to go on this one. So Hindsight. Hindsight is a game where all we've seen so far is an old woman and she's thinking about kind of her memories. And it sounds like you're going to go through her memories for some reason. If that sounds familiar, it's because it's Unravel. So now we get the true test, which is our Annapurna Interactive so good that they can make Unravel 1 a good game. And that is what we're going to find out at some point in 2021 with Hindsight. Because
I'm sincerely hoping this is just the working title for Unravel 3 and they've picked up the rights. If that happened, that would really put my director taking a shit theory to the very extreme. Because you can't take a bigger shit than Unravel. So what is possible here?
Oh, get that on the box art. That's a great quote. Oh yeah, I don't know, man. I don't need that indie story again. That's the story all the indie games have used to use, but it's Annapurna, so we'll see. Anyway, okay, moving on. Next game, we have Ollie Ollie World, which is coming out in winter this year. This is a sequel to there's two Ollie Ollie games so far. These are kind of cool side-scrolling skateboarding games. Yeah, this looks pretty good. I mean, it looks like there's a bit more going on now. These used to be, at least the original game, which I've played a bit of, was much more of a quick kind of 2D, like short levels, 1 or 2 minute runs, and you just had a few set challenges you needed to do, like doing certain tricks over certain gaps. And that'd be a lot. Whereas this looks like it's got more of an actual kind of exploratory feel to it. You can actually travel around. There's different paths. So it's still a 2D game, but you can actually travel, go into the back of the scene or the front of the scene to go on different routes. And yeah, I don't know, man. I mean, the skating was always good in Ollie Ollie. I just was a bit turned off by the kind of simplistic level design. So if this solves that problem, this could be something pretty fun.
I actually think this looks kind of cool. I think there's a lot of scope for a big kind of open world skating game, which is more of a narrative kind of tale where you're just on your skateboard and you're skating around, you're chatting to people, you're hitting some sick tricks off whatever spins you can find in the background and the scenery. I thought this game looked kind of good. I never played an Ollie Ollie game before because I had no interest in the series. And I came out of this trailer going, actually, I could play that. So that's a pretty winning endorsement for the trailer for this one, I'd say. I think this looks kind of cool.
Yeah, no, I agree with that. One to look out for in winter, definitely. So next game then. Oh, this is something. So the longing, Josh. This is a game. Apparently, the guy who created this game basically just went to a cave once and he heard a story about a king that had been laid to rest there or something, and something was meant to happen after his servants waited for a crap ton of days. So then he thought, that sounds like the makings of a good video game. So so what we've got here is a game that's about you play as the kind of last servant of this fallen king. And in 400 days' time, he's meant to rise again, or something huge meant to happen in 400 days' time. So you kind of just dick about a bit, really, and wait for 400 days because you're waiting for this king to come back. So apparently you can explore the cave area and you can solve some puzzles. But now the key here is I've said you dick about a bit for 400 days. That's 400 real days. The clock in this game is a real world clock that ticks down in real time. So, if you don't play for a week and you turn it back on, it's now 393 days. So this game, this game expects you to be checking in for well over a year to wait for the actual thing to happen that is the game. Apparently that'll happen either way. So you can explore and solve these puzzles, or you can just buy the game, do sod all for a year, and then turn it on and see the ending. So that's interesting. Yeah, I mean, Christ, man, I don't know. I said with Road 96, I love that indie developers are doing cool new stuff, but this could be a bridge too far. This is just crazy.
Oh, I love the sound of this. This is just bonkers. What a fantastic idea. I want to do an article where I just invest in no other entertainment but the Lonin. All I do for 400 days is play the Lonin. I read no books. I watch no TV. I listen to no music. I give up this podcast. I devote my life to the Lonin. And after those 400 days, I get the biggest anticlimax as I realize I've wasted my life for an entire year because nothing that happens after these 400 days could possibly live up to the hype. But I almost want to know what it is. I really want to know.
I totally the same with that. I think you need to see it, right? Like, so I should say, for reference, this game's out today. So if you wanna get going on your 400-day timer, you need to buy this game as soon as possible, and then you can join the world in opening that stupid door with the king in next year. And it's just, even the trailer, like, because to be fair to the guy, he knows what he's making. He said he wants to kind of make a game that explores the idea of patience and waiting for something, and the build up of anticipation. But like, the trailer literally has your character just going around, and he'd be like walking up some stairs, and he's going like slow as you could possibly go, and he's got a speech bubble above him going, I got nowhere to be in a hurry. It's just like, yeah, but it's a game. It's a game, though. You can't, like, what? It's just, I don't know whether to be just completely in love with it or insulted. I don't know. It's absolutely wild. But yeah, like the game knows what it's doing. It's just, how would you like to be bored for 400 days because you're a servant waiting for this thing to happen? It's insane. And I tell you what, one thing, man, if this game comes to Game Pass, right, and we've covered Game Pass for a long time now, and we know that the most common deal a developer signs is kind of like a 1 year cycle for the game to be on the service. Yeah. I mean, you're gonna be livid if you play 360 odd days of the login, and then in a month that door's opening, but it looks like you're gonna have to buy the game because it leaves Game Pass. It's just like, what can you even do? Like,
I mean, that's genius, to be fair. That would be the best marketing possible, because everybody who played it or was invested in it would be like, oh crap, I have to buy this game, because
you'd have no choice.
The thing is, I think I've avoided the trap of this game because I came very close to falling into the trap. Because now it's been a few days since the indie showcase. People are going to open that door now before I can. And that would kill it for me. If I found out what it was, I needed to be playing that game almost before it was announced. So I could be waiting patiently for 400 days. Now I know that if I just wait 400 days myself, I can find out what it is. But it will be on my mind for 400 days. What is behind the door of the London? And credit to them. That is quite cool. That this game, weird little indie game made by one dude, will be on my mind. I will think to myself, what 400 days from now, I'll think, I wonder what was behind the door of the London. I'd be straight into it.
Honestly, man, because I was similar to you. I was obsessed with the idea of it had me. I was like, I'm gonna have to buy this as soon as it comes out. And then because I watched the Indie World Showcase a couple of days late because I was busy when it was on. And as soon as I realized it already came out and I'd missed the release, that need to buy it just disappeared, because I knew I wouldn't be the first now. But I got to tell you, man, when that 400-day time is ticking round, if there's someone on Twitch or something that's like streaming the minutes left before that door opens and they're stood in front of it, I'm tuning in, man. I'm keeping an eye on it because I am massively intrigued. I just hope you can, time skip with this thing, right? That would be a killer. If you can just pull an Animal Crossing, change your system clock to be next year and different stuff happens, it would immediately kill the game. So I hope somehow you can't do that. And if you can't, I'm gonna be gripped to this in about 14 months time. So let's check back in then.
I've just Googled it and it's already out on PC. It came out last year on March 2020. So that means the door's opening soon. I don't need to wait that long. In a few months, it'll be here.
Oh man,
win it on.
So excited. Cannot wait for that. That's going to be good. Yeah, that's undoubtedly the highlight of this show is a game where you do sod all for 400 days. Fantastic stuff. Anyway, let's move on. Next game is called There Is No Game, which the narrators on the Indie World Showcase had a ton of fun with. They were like, what? But what is the game? And then the other one's like, there's no game. That's the name of it. It killed me. But anyway, this is a point and click comedy adventure, which also killed me because I hate point and clicks. But to be fair, the trailer looked pretty crazy. This is a pretty mad game. It just had. It's hard to even describe what I watched. I'd implore people to have a little look at this trailer because it's crazy. It's just like loads of random little cut out bits of different games, different styles of games, and none of them look like point and clicks. But this is apparently a point and click. So yeah, I'd be intrigued if I could handle point and clicks, but they just annoy me a bit too much.
I mean, I had a look at the list of games you put down for this, and I watched the Nintendo Indie Showcase, and I can't remember anything about this game. Nice. There might as well have been no game because I cannot remember what this is about. So I'm going to say won't be as good as the Lonin. But frankly, I don't think anything is as good as the Lonin.
No, that's true. Yeah, I mean, you can probably beat this game I'd imagine in 399 days, if not even less. So it's irrelevant compared to the Longing. The only thing that stands up to the Longing is the Levelhead tutorial. So there's nothing else.
I was going to make that same joke.
There it is. We got there. Anyway, okay, let's move on then. Next game is a cool one. This is Teenage Mutant Ninja Turtles Shredder's Revenge, which is a old school kind of arcade brawler, in the vein of your Streets of Rages or, of course, TMNT Turtles in Time, which was a really old, awesome Turtles one. This is made by the Streets of Rage 4 developers who, Streets of Rage 4 kicks ass, frankly. I love that game. And this looks real good, man. I'm quite excited for this one. This is the kind of game I really hope comes to Game Pass because, your brawlers aren't exactly they don't last particularly long when you're not playing them in an arcade because, you don't have to throw money at it constantly anymore. So it would be a really fun, quick playthrough of this game at Game Pass. I think that'd be a real treat.
Yeah, I think this game looks real good. I mean, the pedigree behind it means it probably will be good. It's a game about, turtles, which isn't Battletoads, which makes it 100% more interesting to me. This is the game I wanted instead of Battletoads. A new TMT arcade beat 'em up. Really excited to play this. Looks fantastic. Pixel art looks good. Special moves look good. I could play as my boy Donatello. I'm all in on that. Give me that game now. Go on.
Yep, that sounds good. We don't have a set release date for that one, but it's down as 2021, so I'm sure we'll be getting a release date fairly soon, maybe at E3 or something like that. But yeah, looks great. Anyway, next game is Chris Tales, which is coming out July 20th. Now, this is a strange one, because I've heard this game mentioned for years now, I'm sure. I feel like it's come up in indie showcases all the time. And I just don't know. I don't know a lot about it still, even though it's out soon. But I've heard a lot of hype behind it. And I would say the artwork in it is fantastic. It's got a beautiful kind of hand-drawn 2D art style, but then the world has like a lot of depth to it, like 3D effect and stuff. Looks really cool. I'm intrigued by it, but yeah, not a lot I can really say about it other than that at this point.
Yeah, again, I'm similar to you. It's one of those games which seems to have just been handed around the periphery of my, knowledge for a while now. And yes, I've never actually taken too much interest to find out what it's about. I know that this game has a time travel kind of mechanic to it, which is pretty cool. Time travel in JRPGs in the past, of which this game has always worked well. Think Chrono Trigger in particular. So, if it can evoke any of that kind of spirit, I mean, if it can be even 70% as good as Chrono Trigger, we're in for a very good time. So I'm hopeful. It feels very much like a game which is destined for Game Pass. So I'm definitely not going to go anywhere near buying this. This will end up on Game Pass at some point. I know it's coming to Xbox as well. So basically pencil in a date for about November and you'll probably be playing it.
Yeah, no, that sounds about right. It's one to look at. Definitely, it's looked good from what I've seen. Okay, next game. So, Josh, Konami are back. They're they've made enough pachinko machines now, and they're back making games. It's finally time for some of those big Konami franchises. But we're going to start that with 80s action title Getsu Fumaden, which I don't even think got released outside of Japan. So this is based on that series. This is Getsu Fumaden Undying Moon. And not only is it from a franchise that, let's be honest, nobody really cares about, it's also an action roguelike, Josh. So look forward to this one in 2022.
Sometimes I feel Konami is just actively trolling me. I mean, bringing a historic, long-dormant Japanese franchise back from the dead is the kind of thing that will get my attention. And you will instantly kill that attention by turning it into a roguelike. Because, of course, after about 4 years late to the party, Konami is now chasing that sweet roguelike money like a pachinko machine. Because, of course, they are. This is Konami. This is a company which has so many wonderful properties they won't touch. And they've only just realized that roguelikes are popular. And they're going to release it probably when nobody cares about them. Classic Konami. It really is.
Yeah, I mean, absolutely. I mean, look, right, I'm not saying I want them to turn old franchises into a roguelike, but I mean, guys, you own Castlevania. Like, if you must make a roguelike, did you not think a Castlevania, like a Dracula's Castle roguelike thing that surely would work? But no, let's go for Getsu Fumaden. It's absolutely crazy. I assume this is just a short trip back to the gaming sphere. They're probably going to use this to learn about roguelikes, and then it'll be like 2023, 2024, where they'll finally merge roguelikes and pachinko into the ultimate form of game. And it'll just light up all of the arcades over in Japan. It'd be a magical time. But yeah, look, really weird title. You can only hope that Konami have some bigger stuff coming up at E3, because they are there, apparently. So unless they're there for just a deep dive into Getsu Fumaden, then I don't know what we're doing. But let's wait and see, I guess. Okay, next game, we have Aztec Forgotten Gods, which is a action adventure game with some, I don't know, I'd say there's some kind of Prince of Persia vibes to this. It's like a kind of, it's got some action platforming, some climbing, wall running, a bit of, decent looking third person action combat. It's kind of got this hook of, it's about Aztec mythology and ancient Aztec artifacts, but then also it's set in a very futuristic setting, which is kind of strange. Yeah, I don't know. I mean, I think this looks all right. It looked a little rough around the edges so far, but it's it's not coming out just yet. Apparently, it's late 2021 for this one, so we'll kind of I'll keep an eye on it and see how it shows up in a bigger trailer maybe. But it looked fine, is the best I could say.
Yeah, it didn't get me particularly hyped. I will say we've not really done much with Aztecs in the
Yeah.
gaming sphere, so it is an interesting period of history, an interesting culture to explore. So perhaps it could be interesting on that level. But the whole look and style and gameplay of the title kind of looked fairly generic, looked fairly by the numbers, which isn't necessarily bad. It could be more than playable, but it didn't look like it had anything within it except for its unique setting to really stand it apart from any of the standard indie fare which is coming out. I didn't notice a dead parent though, or a corporate overlord, so
Hmm.
at least plus 2 points for that.
Then again, though, it's it's Aztec mythology, so those people have been dead a long time. There'll be someone there who's how you got a dead parent. You play a character probably as warped to the future, and it's her parents that are dead. There'll be something. It'll be there. But anyway, let's move on. Then next game. This is Skull the Hero Slayer. This is a action platformer with roguelike elements, Josh. Yeah, so I mean, this looks pretty cool to be fair to it. You basically play as a skeleton, and he's kind of fighting off all of the traditional heroes to save his demon king that's been defeated. So they've kind of flipped the script on that. It was actually made at there was a game development club at a university over in South Korea, and they kind of thought of this idea when they were at uni, and now they've all got together to form an independent studio, which is a pretty cool story. So yeah, I mean, I'm not looking to play any more action platformer roguelikes, but if you were going to, this one looks pretty nice. It's got some really great pixel art. The creature design looked fairly good from what we saw from a brief trailer. So yeah, one to look at for fans of those genres, but not for us. I think it's safe to say.
I mean, I saw this and I thought they'd accidentally made Sans from Undertale the lead character in their title. So
Yeah.
I was quite taken aback at the start. I thought, Christ, this feels like copyright infringement. But yeah, look, it's an action roguelike with a clever hook. It's still a roguelike, so I'm not going to play it unless it comes to Game Pass, and I won't have any choice.
Yep, pretty much same here. Okay, then. So just a couple left now, and the next one is we're getting a remake of the original House of the Dead game, which is pretty cool. This will be out later this year. And yeah, I mean, I love me some light gun games. I've gotta say, although I've never particularly been enamored by any real in-house version. Like put me in an arcade with a time crisis machine and the light gun and the little stepper you have to do to come out of cover, and I'm in my element. But I've never really gotten massively with the kind of light gun imitations that you have at home. And I don't know. I think they'll be able to do some good stuff with the Joy-Con. I know it's got like an IR sensor on one of them that can probably be used pretty good for this sort of stuff. But I don't know. It remains to be seen if they're going to be able to get the controls tight enough for me to really, really love this release.
Yeah, it all comes down to the control scheme for this. I love The House of the Dead as a fantastic game series, so I would be very interested in playing a remake of it. I mean, I'd be happy with a straight port, to be honest. You could just put all 4 games on and I'd be pretty content. But, let's see what they do with it. As you said, the Switch is probably the natural home with that sensor. It probably could act as some form of light gun. Will it be accurate enough? I don't know. It's a little flaky. So we'll wait and see. But yeah, color me intrigued because I do love this franchise and I'm very glad to see it back. I didn't see Sega's name anywhere near this, so I'm hoping they got some permission somewhere. But not all, for these guys' sake, if nothing else.
That's a good point, actually. Yeah, I didn't even click onto that. Yeah, you're right. It wasn't there, but I don't know. Must be something going on. Surely it must be fine. But yeah, okay. Then last game. This was kind of the typical one more thing announcement that they always do, where they save the biggest title to last. And yeah, this time it was Oxenfree 2: Lost Signals, which is obviously a sequel to the original Oxenfree made by Night School Studios. Yeah, look, I mean, it was a short trailer, clearly just a quick kind of piece to, show they were making the game, frankly, more than anything. We don't know a ton about it at the moment, other than that it stars the same lead character from the first game, and she returns to her hometown after, because the original game's kind of all set on this creepy little island. So yeah, you go back to your hometown, and I'm sure there'll be some weird shenanigans going on. Apparently, there's mysterious radio signals, and no one knows what they are. That all sounds a little bit Stranger Things. So I'm sure it'll be I'm sure. Look, I'm sure it'll be good. I really, am quite confident in Night School Studios. Even After Party, which I thought fell down on the gameplay standpoint, they'd actually done a really creative, fantastic job with the world they made. I loved the ideas there. So really do like the studio. But I don't know. I didn't feel like Oxenfree needed a sequel. So it's a tricky one. I trust them that, if they're confident and passionate about the idea they have for a sequel, it probably is going to be pretty cool. But a part of me would have kind of rather they just threw something wacky and new out there. I don't know, just thought of something totally that hadn't been done before.
Yeah, I was hoping for a new IP because, as you say, Afterparty was such a good idea. This studio clearly has good game worlds in their noggins ready to burst out. So a sequel is somewhat disappointing, particularly to a game which did not necessarily need one. But I liked Oxenfree. It was the better game between it and Afterparty. It was really enjoyable, in fact. So maybe they just want to return to more comfortable footing and get another good solid release out, because there was work you could do with Oxenfree to make it better still. So yeah, let's see where it goes. I can't say I'm radically hyped, but I'm definitely intrigued.
Yeah, absolutely the same here. It's a good studio, and I'm confident that it'll be, worth playing at the very worst, if not something really good. So yeah, that's the end of the showcase then. Anyway, I mean, as we said, nice brief showcase. The whole thing only runs for 20 minutes, so if any of those games we've talked about have interested you, then I mean, by all means, just pop onto YouTube and throw that on. It's a nice, quick, easy watch. There's no listening to garbage interviews for 3 hours. It's just 20 minutes of games, which is exactly what we need. So yeah, good stuff. Anyway, let's move on then to the second and final news item this week, which is we had another Resident Evil showcase, mainly showing off Resident Evil Village. And yeah, the main thing from this one, which I really wanted to highlight, is there's a new demo. So you get a new demo, bit more Resident Evil Village, which, frankly, I don't need another demo for this. I really like the first tone piece they kind of gave out a month ago. That's good enough for me. I'm going to wait till the game comes out now. But yeah, so there's two demos, and apparently you're going to get half an hour to spend in a village section and half an hour in a castle section. Now, this to me is the most weird way to put out a demo that I can remember in recent times. So basically, you get half an hour to play the village section, and that had to be played already. So you had to play it on Saturday, April the 17th or Sunday, April the 18th. And there was only a 7-hour window where you could have played the half an hour village demo in those days. If you didn't do it, it's gone. It's not there right now. And then next weekend, Saturday and Sunday, you can play the castle half an hour at the same kind of time. So do look up those times in your region if you want to make sure you're there to play the castle demo. And then a week later, you can then play the both parts of the demo. So yeah, for the next weekend, for another weekend, they're then putting up both parts of the demo, and you can spend 1 hour between the castle and the village, and then the game comes out a week later. So I mean, what the hell is that, Josh? Like, really, what are they doing?
I think Capcom is taking the piss. That's the only explanation I have for this, because I read the instructions as to how to get this demo. Because I was like, maybe I'll download it, give it another go. It'll be on PS5. It's something to switch it on for.
Yeah.
And let's give it a try. And I read the instructions and I was just lost. And I'm not going to classify myself as one of the great minds of our time, but I'm not a complete moron. And I just could not understand what I needed. I needed to sign up. Then I was going to be given a dedicated time slot. If I didn't reach that time slot, I was going to get turfed out and I'd have to wait until next week. God knows what's going on. I kind of love it. It's so ridiculously over the top. I kind of respect it, but God knows why they're doing it.
Yeah, I just don't get it, man. I don't know. Like, surely if you've got, like, I don't even mind the time limited thing in terms of, if the demo, once you're in the demo, you've got half an hour to play it. Like, all right, if that's the way you want to treat it, you don't want people exploring it to the point where they dig every single little tiny element out of it. You don't want to maybe spoil that for when they reach that area in the main game. Sure, that's totally fine. But having these 8-hour windows where I have to play that half an hour in that window or else I don't get to play it, it's absolutely insane. I have no idea why they've chose to do that. But yeah, I don't know. I mean, we might see a bit more of this coming up, to be honest, because, E3's gone digital this year and E3 usually has a bunch of demos. So I feel like some other people will be keeping an eye on how this goes, and maybe around E3 we might get a lot of random, you can play the demo for this game for 2 hours on a Thursday if it was raining. We'll get all kinds of just weird nonsense then. But yeah, I mean, look, if you want to check out the demos that are coming up, I mean, the only advice I can give you is find an article about it and find out the times in your region, because it's a real confusing mess. But anyway, other news we got from the showcase was we heard that the Mercenaries game mode is coming back to Resident Evil Village. So Mercenaries was always a pretty cool mode. I always really liked Mercenaries, particularly in Resident Evil 4. This is basically just a against the clock mode where you're in an area and lots of zombies and enemies are coming in, and you get more time on the clock by defeating them and by like picking up little pickups and stuff as you go. And it's just this really fun action oriented kind of spin on Resident Evil, which, once I kind of burned through Resident Evil 4 like twice, because whenever I pick that game up, I always play it twice. I always then play Mercenaries for ages before I, put it to one side for another couple of years. And yeah, just good to see Mercenaries back. I'm intrigued to see how it feels in the new era of Resident Evil, because I don't know. I feel like Mercenaries lends itself more to the third person action style of 4 and 5, maybe, than it does to this more intense, first person formula that they now have for the latest games. But nonetheless, it's cool. Always good to have something to play in, once you finish the story in these games.
Yeah, no, I liked Mercenaries mode in RE4, RE5. Very good modes. They're enjoyable, arcade, high score, chasing kind of fun. As you say, I don't know if it naturally suits an FPS perspective, if I'm honest with you. I think it's very arcadey. I prefer my arcade games to have, see the actual physical character and move them about in that way. But, it could still work. I hope it does. As you say, it could be a bit tonally mismatched. But, let's see where we go with it. I'm glad to see it back, if nothing else. I'd rather they were working on Mercenaries game modes than terrible online modes, which nobody wants to play. So yeah, definitely +1 for get back the fun Resident Evil modes and just scrap the trash, because this is a much more useful addition than Outbreak or whatever crap will come out with it as well.
Yeah, Resident Evil Verse, was it? Reverse, something like that. That's coming out. Yeah. Reverse with its weird cell shaded characters. Yeah, I'm on board for this. Love a bit of Mercenaries. But yeah, I mean that's pretty much most of the stuff we got from the showcase. The only other announcement was that we are getting a VR version of Resident Evil 4, which that could be pretty cool. I'm always looking for excuses to play Resident Evil 4 again. I've played it on the GameCube and then on the Xbox 360 and then on the Xbox One. I'll play it whenever you can give me it. I haven't bought it on the Switch yet because it's about £25 and that feels a bit excessive, but nonetheless, that's probably what I'll pay for this VR version. So yeah, I'm pretty happy to see that. It worked out well for me because, I said at the top of the show, I got an Oculus Quest 2 headset. That actually got delivered to me on the 15th of April. And that was the exact date that they announced that Resident Evil 4 VR was coming exclusively to that headset. So that felt pretty nice. I hope that it works out pretty well, because it's always tricky when you try and take a game that isn't VR and kind of try and smash a VR version together. So I don't know. We'll see how it goes. But I always heard good things about how Resident Evil 7 turned out in VR. So they've clearly got some chops for it.
Yeah, no, it's pretty cool that it's coming. I'll never play it because I just won't buy a VR headset, but I'll be intrigued to see if you think it's good. I'd intrigued to see some, Salazar first-person perspective. That must be pretty cool. Yeah, why not? It's a damn good game is Resident Evil 4, so any excuse, of course, to play it is always worth it.
Yeah, absolutely. In many ways, this is just us finding an opportunity to tell people to play Resident Evil 4, really. It's, if you're just getting into the series now or you got into it with 7, 4 is one of the ones to really go back and have a look at. It's really good stuff. But yeah, anyway, that's the end of the news this week and the end of the show. So if you want to catch us on social media, you can find us on Twitter at Beat the Sheet. We're always posting there about the new Game Pass editions, games leaving, and just other little bits and pieces that come up through the week. So it's a good place to catch up with us. If you want to drop us an email, you can find us at beatthesheetpodcast@gmail.com. And until next time, I'm Andy Wood, and I have hit 70% on the sheet as of finishing that 8-hour Levelhead tutorial this morning. I just tipped over to 70%, so I'm feeling pretty pleased with myself on that one.
I mean, you absolutely should be until you realize you still have 140 video games to complete. So don't feel too smug with yourself. My name's Josh Stevenson, and I'm on 59% of the sheet, but I've got 187 games to complete. So quite frankly, No, I don't. Because once MLB The Show comes out and we hit 500, I'm out of it. So it's all good. Don't worry about it. It's nearly over. The nightmare is nearly over.
Well, yeah, we'll see you again next week, guys, for the big 500, and we'll see if Josh stays or goes. Yeah, he's probably going.
Goodbye.